Quake 1.5 overhauls almost every aspect about the base Quake game, and I think it's fantastic. Some changes are more drastic than others, but this mod makes for a very fresh experience. On first glance, players will look at Quake 1.5 and think that it's just a weapons overhaul, which yes, that is true. The combat shotgun is quicker and has an awesome new sound effect, for example. They also included the weapons from the first Quake mission pack for good measure, and all of the weapons feel great in this mod. The laser cannon is a great alternative to the thunderbolts and gives it a run for its money. After you kill an ogre, you can sometimes take his chainsaw, and while this is a great replacement for Ranger's axe, I didn't ever find a good place to use it at the same time. The mod also features a melee attack and grenades, both of which I haven't found a lot of use for. The grenades are proximity based anyway, meaning that they can kill enemies as well as the player if they step too close to it. This is similar to the proximity mine launcher from Quake Mission Pack 1, and I don't find either of these to be very effective. Still though, Quake 1.5 wouldn't be a weapon overhaul mod in the same vein as Brutal Doom without grenades or melee. Speaking of Brutal Doom, this mod is the closest we've gotten to a Brutal Quake, and I'm fine with this. There are new blood and gore effects added, and it's great blasting an ogre in half with the super shotgun, for example. The ogres and soldiers have extended death animations, which took me a little bit to get used to, but overall it's a cool little addition. Blood splatters on the wall and floor now as well, and from a visual standpoint, Quake 1.5 looks awesome. A flashlight is also thrown in, and I found this to be way more useful than the grenades or melee kick. The first Quake game can get pretty fucking dark, and sometimes it's just great to have another light source when playing through levels. You can flick the light on anytime you want, and it's shoulder mounted, so you don't have to worry about switching weapons or anything. Aside from the new and updated weapons, Quake 1.5 tacks on some new and updated enemies to go along with. The Scrags can actually teleport now, which makes them a lot more elusive than before, and some of them can light the player on fire. The Enforcers can throw proximity mines at you, and they can easily get you killed if you're on low health. Vors are pretty much the same as in the base game, but they climb up on ceilings, which makes them difficult to hit now. As for brand new enemies, there is a flying drone enemy that reminds me of the Centroid in Quake Mission Pack 1. There is a flying demon that has a fireball attack, etc. The drones actually appear in one of the updated sections of Quake 1.5, and this is my personal favourite feature of the mod. The developers actually went in and made some changes to levels in order for them to be more action-packed. When you get the silver key in E2M1, the game locks you in an arena with drones, and I think this is quite an interesting update. I also love how they added a boss into episodes 2 and 3, because in the base campaign, they don't have any. These bosses are nothing groundbreaking, but they are still a welcomed addition, and I'm glad that Quake 1.5 felt the need to give players more boss fights. Speaking of which, the final boss of Quake is completely overhauled, and they made him less disappointing than before. First of all, they added tentacles that whack the player when trying to fight the Vors and Shamblers in the beginning area. However, once you teleport into the final boss itself, you actually wind up inside shub-niggurath. Then you have to put all 4 runes on these pedestals, expose the boss's heart, and finally you destroy him from the inside. Quake 1.5 gives players basically a brand new and climactic boss fight, and this is such a great surprise. When you're inside the boss, the environment doesn't look anything like Quake. I mean, you are inside a giant creature's body and guts after all. Along with updating the game's boss fights, there are also brand new secret levels added into Quake 1.5. My personal favourite is the level where you are walking on a moving train and you have to navigate across it. You can kick the enemies off of the train and it makes the player feel like an absolute badass. Overall, this mod is 100% recommended, and in some ways, I do prefer Quake 1.5 to the base game. I mean, the weapon sounds are incredible and they sound extremely punchy within combats. I like the new enemies along with the updated enemy variants, and the new bosses were great surprises. surprises. Some people might not like the modern graphical enhancements that this mod introduces, but Quake 1.5 is such a fantastic mod in almost every other aspect that it shouldn't really matter. I can see players getting tired of the slow motion mechanic that Quake 1.5 has, but I personally love it. Sometimes when you kill an enemy in glorious fashion, the game goes into slow motion to fully capture that moment. It doesn't go into slow motion very often, so if you are concerned about that, don't worry. There's probably an option to turn it off in the menu somewhere, but I didn't bother to check because I love the slow motion feature. I think the slow motion highlights the excellent explosion and lighting effects on display in this mod as well. I mean, whenever you shoot rockets at an enemy and the explosion lights up the whole room, it's a great feeling, and Quake 1.5 generally feels very polished. I think this mod is way better than any Brutal Quake mod we could have had, and I'm so glad that the developers spent the time working on it. Quake 1.5 gave me the realization that people in their spare time worked on this, and it's such a polished and exciting mod to play. It's crazy to think that just fans of Quake made this, and it came out the way it did. If you are new to Quake, or maybe you haven't played the original game in a long time, then I would highly recommend using Quake 1.5. It uses the Dark Places source port like most of these Quake mods do nowadays, and I had no performance issues to speak of. There was a weird glitch with the water, since sometimes it would just look out of place, but that was the only bug I encountered at least. Apart from that, Quake 1.5 runs very smoothly, and again, if you're looking to get into the Quake series with some modern touch-ups, then this mod is for you. Quake 1.5 isn't just a gimmick and doesn't rely on lots of gore and blood to sell itself, because it is so much more involved than that. I love how they went back to the Quake 1 mission packs that all of 10 people remember and took elements from it. The laser gun is one of my favourite weapons from Quake, and I'm so glad to see it return. That being said, I want to know what you guys think of Quake 1.5. Do you think that it's a good update to the original game, or do you just prefer vanilla Quake over this mod? At this point, I prefer Quake 1.5 in some ways to the base campaign. Those updated enemy mechanics and new weapons really stuck out to me, and there are actually bosses in episodes 2 and 3. I mean, this mod fixes a 20-year issue with the original Quake game, and I think it's fantastic. Quake 1.5 also proves that if a mod is just all about blood and guts without anything under the hood, then it won't have the same staying power. Quake 1.5 does have an overhauled gore system, but there's plenty of other features to keep old and new fans happy. That being said, I would love to know what you think in the comment section down below, and I thank you for watching.